rise in the House today to discuss Bill C2, an act to amend the Income Tax Act, or as I like to call it, the Liberals' tax cut in name only. There are many things to be said about this bill. For starters, the tax cut, while sounding good in the press release, is nothing more than a PR ploy. I want to first note the fact that this tax break is another in a string of broken promises by the Liberals. Recall back to the warm summer months, and I do recall the warmth fondly being here, and the beginning of a long and grueling election. One of the promises made by this government was that the new tax plan, a plan that would cut taxes for the middle class, would be made revenue neutral through a tax hike on the wealthy being defined as those who make $200,000 or more. Well, surprise, Mr. Speaker, the tax plan is not revenue neutral and in fact will cost Canadian taxpayers well over $1 billion per year, year after year. The Finance Minister himself conceded the plan will leave a staggering $1 billion annual hole behind, and this from the head of the government's finance department. Further to this, a report from the Parliamentary Budget Officer estimates the cost to be close to $1.7 billion per year. This tax plan is estimated to cost $1.7 billion per year, adding almost $9 billion in debt over the next 6 years. This broken promise proves the government's plan was grossly miscalculated. It's clear that the Liberals' numbers are a challenging thing to deal with. This tax plan completely eliminates the billion-dollar surplus that our previous Conservative government left behind, as confirmed by the Fiscal Monitor and Finance Canada. Now, Mr. Speaker, I would normally favor tax cuts, but what Canadians are getting here is a future tax hike. That is a tax cut being paid for by deficit spending. By borrowing more money to pay for this tax cut, the government is slightly reducing what individual taxpayers are paying now in exchange for a future hike in taxes. Hike in taxes that will surpass the small decrease they're receiving now. It's akin to taking out a bank loan and thinking the money is an increase in income. It's not. Interest payments on the money borrowed to finance the $9 billion deficit added the next 6 years will add millions upon millions of extra dollars the government owes, which in turn means more money the taxpayer will be forced to pay. This tax cut simply does not make sense. Why pay a little less now for a larger tax hike later? Well, in the world of the Liberals, we do so because it makes this government look good. It makes them look like they're saving Canadians money when in reality they're actually sticking it to future taxpayers. This so-called middle-class tax cut amounts to savings of mere pennies a day at the lower end of the income scale, rising up to a whole $3 a day savings at the top of the end. But it has nothing, but what does it offer those making below $45,000 a year? It offers nothing. Over 17 million Canadian taxpayers make less than $45,000 a year, but receive absolutely nothing from this tax cut. 66% of all Canadian tax filers will get nothing from this tax cut. 338 members of Parliament in this House will get benefit from this tax cut, but not those below $45,000 a year. Now, it's not often I agree with my NDP colleagues to the left of me, but like them, I question how this Liberal government could overlook 66% of Canadians who make less than $45,000 a year who are receiving nothing but a higher debt from this tax cut. This is not a middle-class tax cut paid for by the 1%. It's simply cynical Liberal rhetoric used solely for election purposes. Now, Mr. Speaker, it's not just the fact that this tax cut is nothing but a phony one. It also includes much more than that. This bill effectively slashes the savings vehicle that gives those with low to medium income levels a chance to get ahead. The bill will slash the tax-free savings account from $10,000 to $5,500. We Conservatives understood the importance of saving and investing. Frankly, our tax system is often a disincentive to the lower middle-class income earners when it comes to saving. Tax code would treat interest and income from savings as yet another lucrative pool of money that the government could get its hands on. The TFSA limit at $5,500 a year and then at $10,000 a year was a fair one that allowed for both lower and middle-class income earners to save without worrying that the gains made from interest or rising stock values would be washed away by taxes. Doubling the TFSA was a chance for those at the bottom of the economic rungs to climb up. But never let a good program that benefits Canadians get in the way of the Liberal chance to play politics for their own gain. Let me quote from the Liberal website that's still up about TFSA. TFSAs are tax breaks for the wealthy, like the doubling of the TFSA limit, which does nothing for the middle class. And yet 73% of those who maxed out their TFSAs in 2013-14 were making less than $80,000 per year. 60% of those maxed out their TFSAs made less than $60,000 per year. And what about those horrid 1%ers who the Liberals claim were the biggest benefactors of the TFSAs? Just 5% who maxed out their TFSAs were from this despicable 1%. The government is trying to change the ability of Canadians to save for their future. Through Bill C-2, Liberals are now saying that the middle class should in fact pay more taxes on the money that they save. Rather than giving low and middle class income earners the freedom to save up to $10,000 a year, Liberals are saying that $5,500 is the proper amount. If you're able to save more, then clearly you are rich enough to pay more taxes. Yep, 60% of Canadians who max out their TFSAs make less than $60,000 a year, but they're told it's a tax break for the wealthy, and thus they are not allowed to save more tax-free. It's a fact that many Canadians have come to rely on these savings accounts when planning for their future. Students saving for higher education, families saving to start a family and for down payment on a house, entrepreneurs saving for a business, parents saving for their children, and more importantly, seniors saving to stretch their savings into retirement. These changes will make life less affordable for these Canadians who are trying to save for their vulnerable years. This will be the Liberal legacy, taking away opportunity for wealth generation for Canadians. You see, Mr. Speaker, this bill embodies a Liberal ideology of higher taxes, higher debt, and higher deficits. It highlights the financial literacy of this government. To Liberals, debt and deficit are great things. Taxing people more is a great thing. This is a stark contrast to what our previous Conservative government did. Under our leadership, Canada was prosperous. We had the wealthiest middle class in the world. Canada was an island of stability in a turbulent world. We had a proud legacy of tax fairness for cutting taxes. When in office, our Conservative government reduced taxes more than 140 times, bringing the federal tax burden to the lowest level it's been in 50 years. To put it in perspective, Mr. Speaker, the Maple Leafs were still winning Stanley Cups the last time the tax burden was this low. We did this through targeted measures that were responsible. We did it while ensuring that when taxes were cut, they were cut for good. Not like this Liberal government is doing, cutting today with more to pay in the future. All in all, Mr. Speaker, this bill is simply irresponsible. It'll put an even bigger hole in our budget, it will pile on more debt for future generations, and will cost Canadians more in the long run. It will also take away the economic freedom of Canadians to be able to save and invest in their already tax hard-earned money tax-free. It's for these reasons, Mr. Speaker, I will not be voting in favor of this bill. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to address this member largely because I missed the chance in questions in the last round to one of his Conservative colleagues who suggested that there had been many Liberal promises broken. I'll leave the Liberals to defend their own promises. But I did want to ask this member if the current Conservative caucus has any explanation for the fact that the Conservative promises of the 2000 election campaign included not taxing income trusts. That was broken on October 31st of 2006. A very substantial commitment to reduce wait times in our medical system. That was also a promise broken. A very specific promise to bring in measures on ethics and a bill on ethics with over 60 specific promises, most of which were broken, as well as a plan not to touch our pension ages of retirement. Now, that's just the 2006 election campaign promises of the Conservatives. I could go through the 2008 broken promises and the 2011 broken promises, but I don't have enough time in one question.
Member for Edmonton West.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague for that question. I'm sure Mr. Lamoureux the honourable member from Winnipeg North and Crossway will probably continue from 2008 to 2011 with the broken promises. I'm very proud to stand with this Conservative government. We've made many great promises, lowering taxes, increasing the TFSA. We've stood proud behind our record, and I do so today as well. Thank you.